Well, we did get it. YouTube was being a little finicky. It might be because I've got my old pal, John Bush, coming up. Welcome to this live Friday morning, depending on where you live, edition. What's this show called? The Bloodcast, Jack Blood Rants, here on Deadline TV. If you haven't already done it, please subscribe to this channel. We need numbers in that regard. Please watch our videos. They go back many, many years. In fact, more than a decade. Need some watch hours. Hit the notification and the like button so other people can see that you're watching this show and maybe they'll want to come on. We haven't had a guest yet. And, any second now, if that works, we should have John Bush up with us. John is an old friend of mine from Austin, Texas, and one of the most brilliant activists I've ever had the opportunity to work with and to meet. He did Texans for Accountable Government, which you can do that in any state, and government needs to be accountable to the people more so than just on an election day. There's a lot of different ways to do that. John Bush, did we get you, man?
Jack, how are you?
I'm very good. So we're doing a super low-tech podcast. It's kind of like back in the day, but even lower tech.
All right. We're going back in time.
Hey, man, as long as we can spread the message and the word, however it looks or sounds isn't as important. So we don't have the fancy studio and the software and all of that. Maybe we will someday, and people won't like the show as much, John. I was just kind of telling people who you are and, Texans for Accountable Government out of Austin, but you guys covered the whole state. You did things like gun buybacks, which we did right in front of the police. They were doing gun buybacks. If that was a great event that you did, and you ended up with a trunk full of guns that would have been destroyed and gave people a couple more bucks for them. Police stood there and did absolutely nothing about it. It's something that everyone can do. You did the vampire blood draw project where you called attention to forced blood draws on the streets and the highways of Texas, which I thought was pretty successful. And so many other things. It's just hard to remember. Peaceful Streets Project, John, which was a great idea and certainly preceded BLM by about 10 or 15 years. So you've got quite a history in doing activism. So we can talk about that for a little bit. You're also highly involved in the voluntarist community, anarcho-capitalist community, the crypto community, the off-the-grid community. And I know you've got an event to go to here pretty quick, so I'll let you do some of the talking. I just want to let people know who they're talking to, and you can, of course, promote whatever you want. Let's start with just the whole concept of voluntarism, because it's not a word you hear very often. I think it sounds a lot better and pisses off less people than, say, anarcho-capitalists, which pisses off both Democrats and Republicans. So just talk about, voluntarism and what that means and how we could call ourselves that with our behavior and our actions.
Sure. Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on, Jack. It's been a long time. So as far as if somebody had to put myself and many others into a box as far as a political philosophy goes, first of all, the labels and stuff kind of compartmentalize people, right? We're all humans, we're all different, we're all changing and evolving, but I most definitely am an advocate for voluntarism, and I guess it could be simply defined as a desire for human beings to coexist through voluntary human relationships, right? So we would contrast the voluntary association, voluntary contracts, voluntary organizations, voluntary networks with the coercive aspect of the state, right? So just by fact of being born in a particular geographic area, the government expects you to be subjected to all their rules and laws, whether you agree or not. There's this understanding that you're born into a certain social contract, but it's like, I didn't sign the contract, right? Now, it doesn't mean that we want to be hiding out in the woods, or we reject all of society altogether, or we don't want to do business with the rest of the world. It just means that we believe human relationships should be voluntary, and that it's wrong to force people to do things that they don't agree with or that they find to be unethical. And that's really the essence of the state or government. So, a lot of people philosophize and write books and articles about voluntarism, but what the work I'm trying to do in a lot of the organizations and get real freedom in our lives right now, and to build the systems, the infrastructure, the networks, the counter economies, so that we can experience freedom and safety without having to get crushed by the man. And more importantly, so we can build a foundation for future generations to experience freedom for generations to come.
Right. I mean, I think the last podcast I did a whole bunch of work on 9/11. They had no problem me doing all of that. As soon as I write voluntarists or voluntarism or anarcho-poco, that kind of thing in the description of this video, I have problems for the first time ever. I think we just clipped out for a second there. So maybe that's something that they are afraid of, and that makes it even more enticing, I think, for some people. But what we're talking about, folks, is, your community, your cities, your states, your country, the world in general, and make decisions for your own family, as long as it's not infringing on other people's life, liberty, or property that concern you. And that if you refuse, then a gun shouldn't be pointed at you, and you shouldn't be locked up in prison. I guess to be devil's advocate, we're not capable of making our own decisions, that the government and the leaders know what's best for us, and they get into things like taxes and all the rest of it. Recently, as we know, mandates and forced vaccinations and many other things that are good for the collective, but maybe not so good for you. So the other side of the argument is we can't just let people make their own decisions, right?
Yeah, I think the good bulk of the population is terrified to death of the prospect of total freedom, because it comes with a whole lot of responsibility. In all honesty, we're not proposing that a voluntary society would be, a utopia and everything would be clean. There would be no security problems or whatever. It would probably be messy. In fact, transition will probably be very messy. But I believe that I myself am capable for making decisions on my behalf and on behalf of my family. I think it's wrong that people are forced to do things against their will, and I think it's a terrible system when one group upon everyone else. I'm a big advocate of decentralization. That's one of the reasons why I'm such a fan of cryptocurrency. I think it's important that power be decentralized, participate in them, right? And that's the further you centralize power, the more easily it is to harm a large number of people. The further you centralize power, the more attractive it be bad actors out there, which I of course do. Nobody denies that. Then we should oppose this existence of an institution that allows these bad actors to wield so much power, and more often than not, they have zero accountability. That's the real challenge.
Yeah.
If we were in a genuinely free society, whenever you have the bullies or the criminal syndicate, you can fight back against them, or you can have your private security force or the neighborhood protection or whatever, and you don't end up in a cage with a felony because you dare to fight back against a crooked cop that's beating up, black and brown people in poor neighborhoods.
Or white people, for that matter, because that's happened to me. Yeah, I think it's because anarchy has become such an evil term, and not just now. I mean, they were locking them up over 100 years ago, and there were a few false flags involving so-called anarchists, was locking them up without any charges or trial, while a lot of the right wing was complaining he was going after them. I always thought it would be good to mention that he goes after leftists too, those guys, and they're all the same as far as I'm concerned. Let's talk a little bit about, I know you're doing a thing down in Mexico again here, I guess at the beginning of the year. And there's a new HBO series out about anarcho-poco, and how dangerous it is. And I haven't seen it, but I assume the spin isn't very good. I'm not sure how that whole project ended up. If you could just spend a few minutes talking about that and the event you're doing.
Well, so I was there for 6 months in Acapulco. We actually lived down there for half a year, and then was there for 6 weeks the year before, participated in the event, spoke in Acapulco. And so there was a couple documentarians, filmmakers that were embedded within the community. I actually thought that they were just part of the freedom community. One of them actually is, an anarchist. And honestly, the documentary is really well done. And while they don't highlight all the cool projects or, the gardening and the Freedom Cell Network and people doing good work, that wouldn't sell to HBO, of course. The story is very accurate. And I knew just about every character that was one of the main folks on the documentary, and even the guy that got killed, and then the other guy that was all aggressive and crazy. But it's an accurate show. I encourage folks to watch it. The first couple of episodes give a fair explanation of anarchism and cryptocurrency and agorism. But then after episode 2 or so, it really starts getting into the drama that panned out. And, in all honesty, there was a lot of characters that were part of the event or surrounding the event that were very high drama people with some issues.
Well, I mean, it's the same.
Bring together a bunch of high.
Yeah, it's the same in any group. I mean, nothing, like you said, and very accurately, and I've been saying this for 20 years. There is no such thing as utopia in this life. So, we need to quit acquiescing when people are promising that to us, which they constantly are. So there's always going to be a few bad apples or a few odd characters or people you have to deal with. I mean, as you said, freedom can be a little messy, but totalitarianism and fascism and all the rest is also pretty messy. So you might as well have your freedom as long as you're living in a giant mess somewhere, right?
Sure. Yeah. It's
and then
better to what's that expression? It's better to Thomas Jefferson said, I'd rather have messy liberty than comfortable, secure tyranny or something like that. And I agree. We're never going to have a life without risk. And if we try to create a world...
let's go back to crypto for a second, because I know you've been in it since the very beginning. I remember, you were one of the first people that was talking about Bitcoin. I've always been a little leery about it, obviously, because a digital money, a one world or digital money is something, blockchain technology is something that JP Morgan wants to institute for all of us. It's something Bill Gates has talked about in the past, digital currency. So I'm always just a little leery about it. And then a lot of people got in it late. And as it's been suffering some major growing pains, in that about half of it's gone from just last year or whatnot. There's been a lot of NFT scammers out there and people have been getting hurt by that. So there's always something that's going to be a little negative. I just don't feel like I want to be conditioned. I know Anarchapulco, a lot of the guys there are leaders in the crypto community. You've been one of those people. Kind of give us an analysis on where all that is right now and what people should expect. I assume you think it's all coming back.
Well, yeah. So Bitcoin was created in 2008, 2009, and essentially it's a more effective way of operating a database, right? That's what this blockchain is. It's a decentralized distributed ledger. So previously, all throughout history, people had to rely on centralized institutions, namely governments and banks, in order to maintain the accuracy of a ledger for a currency or for bank accounts, for example. And of course, we can't trust the banks, can't trust the government. But this cool, innovative new technology known as blockchain, which of course Bitcoin was the first blockchain technology, it does the same kind of ledger application where it maintains who owns what, who sent what to whom. Well, not who really, what address sent what money to what other address. But it's decentralized and distributed. And with Bitcoin, there's over 15,000 different computers that host this blockchain. So if one of these computers tries to give themselves extra Bitcoin, for example, all the other computers will know that it's a fraudulent transaction. They'll reject it. They won't recognize it. So for the first time in history, we have a digital means of transferring value, of transferring information without having to trust a third party. Additionally, because of its decentralized nature, it enables us to send money back and forth to one another, and there's not a damn thing the government can do to stop it. They can pass laws, but other countries will keep running it. They can pass laws, but we can obscure our IP address and still run these nodes, right? So there's a lot of people that speculate that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general is all part of this whole New World Order, Mark of the Beast style system. I don't think that's the case. I think that the man was caught off guard by blockchain technology. It's very likely that it was created by one or more cypherpunks. These were like internet geeks early on in the 90s. They wanted to create a sovereign digital, experimented with different methods, and they kept coming up short because they had the problem of centralization, and then how do we stop people from copying these units digitally and then just, defrauding the network. But Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever that was, he, she, they, them, they managed to figure out a way for it to work. Now, early on, back in 2011, 2012, when I started learning about Bitcoin, I thought that it would end the central banks, and like, here we go, this is going to end the Fed. But I underestimated the cunningness of these central banks because they've merely co-opted some of the momentum.
Yeah.
And now they're creating these central bank digital currencies, which aren't blockchain based, I should say. However, they are digital. But the point I want to drive home for your audience is whenever this central bank digital currency system is fully implemented, where your money is tracked, traced, and also controlled, using privacy-based cryptocurrencies, because the Bitcoin blockchain is transparent, but there's other coins like Monero that completely obscure who sent what to whom. Whenever the CBDC system is fully implemented, cryptocurrency, decentralized privacy-based cryptocurrency is going to be the only way for free people to do business online without them being able to stop it. I'm still a fan of barter, silver, gold, trade, you scratch my back, I scratch your back, whatever. But when it comes to doing business online, sending money online, it would behoove folks to at least learn how to use these privacy-based cryptos.
Yeah, I'm still not convinced that it's private. I really have a hard time with that one. And we've seen that before when people have been investigated. And as you mentioned, they can do a digital autopsy,
Bitcoin's
so to speak.
Not private.
I'm sorry?
Bitcoin is not private.
Yeah.
Bitcoin's not private, and that's the case. People thought it was early on.
Not crypto.
It's paying the price, right? But there's other cryptos, like the IRS even issued an award for people to crack the encryption algorithm on Monero, and they were going to pay like $20,000 or something crazy, and nobody was able to do it because it's private and secret. And of course, it's I can't read the code, but there's people that I respect and trust that can read it because it's all open source. And so thus far, the anonymity of using Monero, for example, has held up. But then you got to ask yourself, okay, if people don't trust it all the way, what's the alternative? A lot of people say, I don't trust it, I don't believe in it, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, that's fine. But then what do you propose? Because we're very quickly entering a time where all the money is going to be ran through these CBDCs. And yeah, like I said, we could trade in person outside of their scope. But when it comes to online transactions, this is the answer. And if it's not the answer, I'm all ears for alternatives. Because you know me, I'm all solutions oriented. So the question is like, okay, well, what are we going to do then? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, John Bush is with us, and I want to talk about Plandemic 3 and some of the things that you're doing. They've really got us locked in this divide and conquer, divide and rule thing. And I've been saying, Trump was probably the biggest psyop in political history, turned a lot of my friends against me, a lot of libertarians, truthers, even militia guys. They're all, they're all in on the Trump train. And of course, there's some major opposition to anything that's involved with him. And a lot of it's just theater. I don't know how we fix this part of it. I mean, I've always been hated by Democrats and Republicans, John, but this is as bad as I've ever seen it. I even took a few years off because I just didn't want to get involved in it. So you're a solution guy. I mean, creating something that people want to emulate, being a good example for people, living well. I suppose that's attractive and a magnet, but you know how it is. You go for Thanksgiving dinner and you say one wrong thing and your family wants to cancel you, you know?
Yeah, that happens far too often, unfortunately. We created a network of over 33,000 people now all across the globe. It's called the Freedom Cell Network. And so I don't think that we'll be able to wake up or win over the majority of people by any means. A lot of people are very comfortable in their servitude, and a lot of people are content to fight against the left versus right versus left, blah, rich versus poor, black versus white, blah, 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 blah. But I think the best thing that we could do is identify and find people that share our values, freedom, mutual respect, bodily autonomy, and then get to work with those people to build more freedom in our lives. So the Freedom Cell Network brings people together. They felt all alone and isolated before. Now they're pulling their kids out of government schools, starting homeschool co-ops, buying land together, growing food together. We just recently pitched in and purchased a whole cow. 16 of us put in shares and bought a whole cow that got slaughtered and distributed. We had a meeting with like 70 Central Texas Freedom Cell people, and we spent most of the time identifying local food producers, creating a list so we could give them our business. So I think the new paradigm is find people that care about freedom and truth and start building and working together with them, and to hell with everybody else.
Well,
they're not going to see the writing on the wall. It's not our job to wake them up.
I mean, we're gonna still be in the paradigm of lesser of evils, because we've got the Biden administration going back and punishing Amish with raw milk, and I mean, this is all the stuff that happened in the Obama administration. So I can certainly understand why people, don't want to support that, and maybe want to support someone who is a lesser evil, who won't do that to you and let you live in your rural community and do the things that you do. I live in a city. We only have you for 5 more minutes, I guess, on the broadcast. You've got another gig, and I want to bring you back for a longer form so we could really get deeper into some of these issues, which I know people are pretty attracted to or interested in. Let them ask you questions, either through the chat or through call-ins, because I think you're a great resource, John. I know you personally. Your heart's in the right place. You're a good guy. None of us are right all the time. Certainly I'm not. Though I've rarely been wrong. I usually predict the future. I've actually undersold it. When they were telling me I was a batshit crazy nut conspiracy theorist, I was actually underselling some of the things that happened. It was worse than even I thought at the time or wanted to say publicly. You're doing a thing, you're leaving here to go to a thing called Plandemic 2 or 3. A lot of people can relate to that. What's that about?
Oh, yeah. So there's here in Central Texas, there's all sorts of really cool people in the freedom and truth community. And Mickey Willis, along with Del Bigtree and JP Sears, are hosting an event. It's like a pre-launch party for Plandemic 3. Of course, Plandemic was the one of the first little mini documentaries to expose what was going on with COVID, and when a lot of people were kind of caught like a deer in the headlights. They really identified what the agenda was, what it was all about. And it's that same experience for decades now. It's like we call it, we shout out the conspiracy theory from the rooftops, and then maybe 2, 3, 5 years later, it ends up being the headlines, right? Nobody ever comes back to apologize.
I know.
Or say, hey, sorry about that. But I mean,
no, you know what? And you know why, John? You know why? Because people have egos. And they don't like being wrong. They don't want to admit that they're wrong. So they'd rather just write you off forever than to come back and go, hey, you know what? You were right about that. And what else do you know? Maybe you can help me out on some other stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a shame. But, I mean, there's 8 billion people on this earth, so we can't win them all. I know I butted heads with a lot of friends from high school on Facebook during the height of the pandemic, and I think the algorithm just removed them from me, or they stopped following me or whatever, because now they're not around anymore. But I get those Facebook memories, and it's like, oh yeah, now that's mainstream headline. This was all BS or whatever. But whatever. So yeah, we're going to that event. Really excited to bring in our community out there. They gave me a little speaking slot. I'm going to talk about freedom cells and help encourage people to really focus on solutions, because at the end of the day, I think it's the best antidote for feeling overwhelmed and anxious about where we find ourselves.
Yeah.
There's a lot of tyranny. We got this technocracy, surveillance society coming into play, and a lot of people are getting black-pilled. That's where you go so deep down the rabbit hole, you just become apathetic. So the solution, the antidote to that is to get together with freedom-minded people and build stuff, do stuff, act, create, and you'll find that all of a sudden you're experiencing greater freedom in your life, and it makes a world of difference.
Yeah. I mean, work has to be done. I'm old. Okay. You're still young enough. You have the energy and the time to work on a lot of this. And I'm not saying old people are completely useless, but we're not as useful as we were when we were younger and could go out and travel and wait in lines and put your life on the line, because we've both done that. We've put ourselves in the line of fire. Our buddy Art Acevedo basically lost his career. They sent him to, where did they send him, to Tampa Bay, I think, and he didn't last more than a month or two before he was kicked out. I don't think anyone wants to touch him with a 10-foot pole right now. You see, there is karma. Karma is true.
Yeah, they didn't like him. Apparently, he's made some joke. Obama. He reminded me of Obama a whole lot. But yeah, I think he's pretty much done.
He was good. Hold on, and let's see if we're.
Soccer.
Yeah. Well, your thing in Mexico isn't till January, so I can bring you back and we can promote that. I don't know if you want to plug anything else before I let you go, John. I appreciate the half hour. Folks, I'm going to stay with you after he leaves us, and we'll take your calls or answer questions and promote or get through on the way out, John.
We have a free email newsletter for a business that I started, Live Free Academy. We help people with freedom when it comes to decentralized technology, exit and build, homesteading, entrepreneurship. So people can join the free email newsletter at livefree.academy/email, livefree.academy/email.
All right, man. Well, you take care of yourself and all your peeps and your beautiful kids. And I really appreciate you doing what you're doing. It is certainly a whole different side than where a lot of us are living. So I'm fully at the mercy of the system. So I would love there to be alternatives, man, if I could. So you take care, John. And like I said, get back to me. We'll get you on when you got a little more time so we can really flesh out some of this stuff. And then I can get you ready. Take care. Yeah, John is definitely a guy you can learn from and model after. And that's why I had him on. We were supposed to have him for a little longer, and then Del Bigtree and Plandemic 3 and John's in popular demand. One of the things, man, is that when I was on my way out in Austin, Texas, and I was blackballed, we because we're going to talk about Alex Jones in a second, and John has had some really bad. I'll speak for him. He had some pretty bad run-ins. Not because of anything he did. Not allowed to do that, and this is kind of what happened to me. And if he's not a part of replacing and putting in a libertarian governor, and they don't want to give him credit for it, then no, that's not going to happen. He'll kill that. Snatch victory or defeat from the jaws of victory, as they say. You guys can look at there was a gun rally that Alex crashed. I was supposed to speak at that, and I knew that this was going to happen. So I'm like, nah, not going to do it. And you can see video on what he does to activists in his town that aren't subservient to him, or that's how it was back in the day. But John, when I was blackballed, even by Brave New Books, I was kicked off all the radio stations and blackballed by the guy that's bitching about being deplatformed. He would bring me aboard to certain events, have me do speaking events, stuck up for me, and really got my back when a lot of people were afraid to. And that's what it was. They were afraid. I know Jim Mars and Webster Tarpley and others had told me, hey, we were told in no uncertain terms that if we do your show, they can never go on the Alex Jones show. Well, obviously want that kind of exposure and publicity and to reach that amount of people. So they're forced to choose between someone that they have a relationship with that's always been cool to them, that would be me, and someone who's just exploiting them. And that's how that whole operation was working, man. Can I give the website for the global walkout? Oh yeah, please do. In fact, if Patricia, if you want to call in, I got a number here. You guys could be on the show. I'll spend at least another half hour with you, and we'll kind of see where it goes. 206-809-0469. 206, write this down. 809-0469. Kind of 69 in there. And lots of nines. Not enough threes. And a six. It's very Teslassian. 369. Master numbers of the universe that plug you in to good energy and good things. Allegedly. It's pretty funny. Yeah, my friend Patricia, who's just been a great friend of this show and all the stuff I've done for a decade or longer, is telling me about this global walkout where for one day, it's kind of like a universal strike. For one day, we just don't do business. I love stuff like this. If you have your own business, can you afford to not do business, take the day off and not do business? I remember, it's pretty funny. I remember that the Hispanics in Texas, and I guess this was happening all over the country, organized and had a national strike so we would appreciate them and all their hard work. And we should, obviously. I'm all for that. Everybody should be appreciated for all their work and hard work, as long as it's not hurting people. And what ended up happening was people, I know when I lived in Austin when that happened, and what happened was they all stayed home, which meant that sometimes that stuff can backfire. But yeah, now we're talking about strikes, so my connection is unstable. I'm going to have to find this is not so fine. So I don't know if it's because my kid has a game going or something and it's just taxing the system. I don't know, but it was working great and now all of a sudden it's not. Because Patricia is in Switzerland. One of these days, it is Skype, and I'll always do that. I don't have a Skype handle anymore. Boy, I don't know how this is going to play. This thing keeps bitching at me. The Skype handles they give you now are you don't get to have names or something. I don't know. I tried to use my radio gun name and I lost my last Skype. So the new one has all kinds of letters and numbers. It looks like an IP address or something. It just goes on forever. Very difficult for me to give that out to people. So generally what I do is I get their Skype and I connect that way. 0469. You're the best, Patricia. I just don't think we're going to be able to go on. I'm not sure how much of this, if any of this is again reconnecting. Yeah. Is it cutting out, you guys? Is it constantly cutting out? Because if it is, I got to end this, and unfortunately, we'll wrap it up. Unsubscribed him. He didn't do it. YouTube decided to do it for him, which is gotta be partially why the subscription numbers are fairly low. I could just suck. It could be that. You don't like my set, my beautiful set that I spent all this money on. But you saw I was the notice I was live, but they didn't notify you, and that's a problem. We can't grow the show if they're going to be doing that, and maybe it's not possible to grow a show on YouTube with what I say. I guess if I was, I'd probably be okay. Maybe not Republicrats so much. If I was a good Democrat, which is why people are, if I was a big Trump hater or something, then I'm sure I'd have an easier and better time here and probably more people as well. But then I wouldn't be able to say a lot of the stuff I get to say because they get very upset. I think you're talking, what is it? Nurshid. What am I missing in that? I know it's spelling something, but you're on there and I appreciate you being with us. I think you're talking about crypto. It has issues. The day I was buying my cold storage wallet, XLM and VET exchange can't do a thing. Secret Service is the only agency that would take our complaint, and they're not going to help you with this. I feel it. I just still feel it is, conditioning. Conditioning can come in a lot of good ways. All of this, I can't imagine if you bought in and went, oh, this is going to go to 200 grand. Yeah, see, it's cutting out. This could go to 200 grand a coin. You got in at $100 or whatever. I know some people that I guess made some money. I didn't find a lot of people that cashed out because it is kind of like a little bit of a Ponzi scheme. You make so much money, you want to stay in and not get out. And then at some point you lose money. But if you got in the beginning, it's still pretty substantial. If you got in late, you lost half your money and you're not too happy about it. But people are saying the same thing about their 401ks right now. I'll try to keep going. I asked Alex once which Bible he read, and he looked at one of the movie screenings. Yeah, his wife, who I guess it came out on his phone and through this trial that Alex Jones's first wife, Violet, who wasn't very nice to me usually and was a little preachy at me. Get your own house in order before you start telling me my house is out of order, because I don't wear my spirituality on my sleeve like some other people do. And usually those are the people. And she was doing that. And had some bad. It was backed up by the information that his lawyer, hey, Roger Stone's right about this one. I just can't. I'm sorry. No one's against him later. Although his new lawyer apparently is falling asleep in the courtroom and texting and not paying much attention. So all of Alex's lawyers have just been horrible. Not only is he using Blackwater dudes to their wife, some drug issues, I guess. They lost it. Was it last Christmas that the police had to be called for domestic violence? She's got some major issues. So again, you get your house in order, and then you could start telling me how to get my house in order. He who is without sin can throw the first stone, right? Treat people how you want to be treated. Okay, so I guess we're done. It's just not going to happen.